So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes, and their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted that we have with us Laura Friedl-Hirst, who's Managing Director at LFH Regulatory. And so, Laura, firstly, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, your business, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
So yeah, thank you, Chris. So obviously you've just introduced me. My name's Laura, and I'm the managing director and founder at LFH Regulatory. So it's a little bit of a difficult one when we get asked what we actually do because we're very niche in terms of what we do offer. But I suppose in a nutshell, the way that we can kind of say it is that we are a consultancy, and what we specialize in is the regulatory, so regulations around IVDs and medical devices, but we tend to work a lot with small style businesses through to medium-sized companies.
Right?
And it can be anything like innovators from they've got an idea of a product that they want to bring to market through to potentially, medium-sized businesses. They've already got products on the market. They are looking to remediate maybe some compliance issues they may
Yep.
have, or looking to transition, because at the minute there's a lot going on in terms of regulation around EU requirements, transitioning across to regulation from directive. So essentially,
Yep.
we're kind of like a one-stop shop working with companies to facilitate anything from feasibility of an idea through to
Yep.
launch,
Yep.
and then any kind of life cycle management of that product to work with companies.
Wow. Well, brilliant. So just a couple of things then. So just so I know, and forgive my ignorance, IVD is what's that stand for?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm using kind of terms that I get annoyed with when people use acronyms, etc. So it's an in vitro diagnostic. So it is classified as a medical device, but an in vitro diagnostic is essentially anything. So it's a sample that's taken from the body and tested outside of the body.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, no, yeah, that makes sense. So just again to help people that might be watching that have some interest, what sort of business or organization would you typically work for? Um, you may not be able to name them, but what type of organizations would you say?
So it depends really, and like you say, it could be someone that's just got an idea, and they're a limited company, a small startup. It could be one, two people in that business. They might have worked in the industry, hence why they've come up with the idea. So it could be like a clinician, healthcare professional.
Yep.
So that's maybe a small company that we'll work with to then look at where they are from a strategic perspective and help facilitate get that market access from a regulatory
Brilliant.
perspective, because things around intended use claims and things like that can have a massive impact on the risk classification,
Yep.
which can impact route to market
Yeah.
and time to market. So it's key that we kind of look at that in the first instance. But we work with them types of companies, and they might be very small startup companies with the ideas. There's also as well spin outs from university, where we help with that to commercialize their product. We can't commercialize it personally, but we work from a regulatory perspective.
Yep.
To the bigger kind of companies that are already established. So it could be things like companies that are selling product already. It could be substance-based devices, so like emollient creams. It could be software apps that are deemed to be medical devices, because sometimes, again, we go back to the intended use, the claims that can actually take it from a wellness device through to a
Yep.
medical device, which then has the impact again on route to market.
Wow. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? A whole bunch of applications, and obviously, a whole bunch of regulations to go alongside it. I would imagine that's must be quite a challenging
Yeah,
thing to
there
do.
is, and it's not only that, there is also as well an EU artificial intelligence regulations coming out, and we know that technology is moving pretty quickly.
Yes.
So there's not only the medical device regulations sometimes to consider, it's also having to look to see if there's an AI element that sits with their device. And if there is, it's also looking at the requirements that are being enforced for the AI regulation.
Goodness. Wowzers. That sounds like quite a fun place to date. Maybe looking backwards to start with, Laura, could you tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you?
I mean, if you want to go really far back, Chris, we can talk about how I kind of ended up doing what I did, because I think throughout my life, and I wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia. I didn't get kind of a diagnosis till age of 22, 23. But before that, I came out of school, didn't know what to do, didn't think I was very academic, in a sense of things. So I started doing different jobs, done various different jobs. Worked, I think the first job that I ever got out of school was probably working in a supermarket, worked at a local supermarket, and I did different departments around there. I've worked in care with the elderly, worked with people with learning disabilities as well. And I think it got to a point where when I started packing for a living, and when I was working there at the time, they were students that were there over the summer break. They were women that I'd say were middle-aged, probably my age now, when I was actually there. And it started making me question my life because I was working for minimum wage. It wasn't enjoyable. It was just a means to live. That I started questioning it. And I remember I got talking to what I say is a middle-aged woman at the time, there, and she actually was doing a women's into science foundation course at the local university. And
Right.
I thought, sure, there's something more to life than this. And do I want to be middle-aged working for minimum wage and being spoken to in such a manner that some of
Yeah.
these people are being spoken to? So it was a bit like it was like faith because I looked at the local paper and this massive advert was for like the local university and there was a science foundation course. So I just called up, applied for it, went
Brilliant.
in some tests, and I was accepted on the foundation course. But
Brilliant.
it's kind of like took a little bit more than that to get to where I was. Because at the time I thought after I'd done that foundation course, and it was probably around that time when I realized I was dyslexic, that from there I kind of went on to do operating department practice, which is working in the operating theatres.
Right.
There was some stuff that happened in my life that made me realize and say, do I want to do this? So it took me a lot to actually say, I don't want to do this. Because there were some mental health struggles at the time as well that I said, I don't actually want to do this. So I gave backward. And at that point, after I'd done a year, just over a year, going into my second year, I'd qualified after that year. I went and worked in the bank for a year and went on to do medical biology,
Right.
at the University of Huddersfield. So it was still the same university, born and bred in Huddersfield, went to university in Huddersfield. So I've not gone far from there. But from that perspective, doing the medical biology degree, there was a placement year. And that placement year was in regulatory affairs. Didn't know where it was, applied for it because I needed the cash, and
Yep.
obviously it was a paid placement. And it's just kind of gone from there, essentially. That then I
Brilliant.
came out of university and says, what am I going to do? And I suppose that's the long version of kind of where I've got to in my
Yeah. Yeah.
life, initially, and that's where the starting journey happened in terms of going into regulatory affairs. And from there, I've kind of grown to do, the regulatory piece, quality, and some of the clinical stuff. But I suppose if you're asking me how I got into business, that's a little bit of a different story because I did work for varying companies of varying sizes. And I think the final bit was when I were working for a corporate company, and there was this proclaiming basically that there were certain things where they said that they were caring, they wanted work-life balances, they wanted all this. And actually, they didn't, on reflection, when you actually
Right.
work there, the culture was not like that. It was
Yeah.
toxic. And it came to a point where I questioned my ability in what I could do in my job. And that's the point, because I'd always wanted to do contracting, but never thought I had enough experience.
Yep.
But now is the time to do that.
Yep.
And that's when I set up the limited business.
Brilliant. Brilliant. What a great story of finding the way through. So I'm guessing when you were growing up, you didn't expect to be here. What were your plans when you were growing up? What sort of things were you planning to do?
What was I planning to? I don't know. There were varying things that I thought about. I think as a child, some of the stuff I probably thought I would want to do because I very much liked drama and the
Right.
theatre. Yeah, and it's what I really. So I did it as GCSE, in terms of drama, and it's something that I always really enjoyed, but didn't see kind of like a future in it.
Go on.
And kind of obscurely as well, I always thought about nursing, which I suppose
Right.
does have some form of alignment when we think about
Yes.
medical devices.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so those are two things that kind of sat in my head. But if you'd have told me I'd have gone into regulatory affairs, I kind of would have laughed because I know, when you put the two and two together, because in all honesty, when I left school, I couldn't write a paragraph. I didn't understand the concept of it
Good
because
one.
I didn't get the support that was needed. And when
Yeah,
you
yeah,
actually look at the behavioral patterns at school, they kind of align with that undiagnosis of dyslexia. So
yeah,
the fact now that I've gone from that to working something that's legislation and having to interpret that and understand it,
yeah.
I don't know how I've done it myself, in all honesty.
Incredible. No, I mean, really incredible. I would imagine, having to read a whole bunch of what I would imagine in relatively boring legislation is the last thing that you'd want to do. I would want to do without dyslexia, let alone doing with
Chris,
it.
it's about working efficiently, work smarter, not harder. So
Fair
sometimes
enough.
you can do control and find. We don't
Uh,
have to read because it's 365 pages just even the EU medical device regulations. So yeah, so for me, it's kind of like that about picking out what's required.
yeah. No, brilliant. But even choosing to do that is amazing. So looking at, as you've grown the business, as you said, over the last few years, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome?
I think it's that. I mean, everyone talks about imposter syndrome, but is it imposter syndrome? Is it more doubt, self-doubt, or not kind of, that kind of recognition, self-awareness, and
Yeah,
going, actually, I've achieved so much? Because sometimes you kind of sit back and you go, have I achieved enough? Have I done enough? Is there things I could have done better? So I think one of them is that self-doubt at times and actually
yes,
believing in yourself as being one of the kind of the biggest things. But also as well, in terms of looking at it's actually some of the biggest challenges has been looking at getting the right people in the business.
yeah. Yeah, it's a big one. I think I feel that it's the most critical thing for successful scaling is the right people. I think Tom Peters talked about the right people on the right bus. Right people on the right seats on the bus.
You know
Um,
what? I didn't know what that one was then, so I couldn't have helped you on that when you were saying that. But
yeah,
I think it is because when it comes to the kind of the hiring aspect, if you don't have the right people, like you say, on the right seats on the right bus, you're never gonna push forward, you're never gonna progress.
no,
And it's always going to be problematic. So for me, one of the biggest things here is when we talk about hiring, is going with gut instinct and making sure that
yeah,
what we're doing is bringing in the right people. And it's not necessarily on experience, it's on attitude as well.
100%. It's a fundamental to
Mm.
what we often work with people on recruiting is traditional recruitment is we recruit on experience, but we sack on attitude. That's the fundamental. So our proposition, as you probably know, is you know let's find people with the right attitude, but a base level of
Yeah.
experience or qualification, no problem. But above that, it's all about attitude.
You
And
can train stuff, you can train people, and if they've got the right attitude, they want to learn.
if they want to learn exactly, they want to learn to do it our way. That's the key thing. I want to do it rather than because I've got the experience, I'll do it my way. Well, if that doesn't fit, then we've got a problem. So, totally get that. And what would you say, whether it's from the successes or challenges that you've had, are your biggest learnings about scaling a business?
Biggest learnings, I'm trying to think, that's kind of put me on the spot, that one. What's my biggest learnings? I think never to say. So a lot of people will look at failures in business and think that that's actually a failure, if you've got something wrong, but it's not. It's a lessons learned and things to implement to put in future to make
100%.
sure that doesn't happen again. So there's things that's happened within the business. Because I mean, I've been trading nearly 6 years now where I thought, oh, I really don't want to have to deal with that. Oh, God, how am I going to deal with that? What do I do? And really, it has caused like a lot of anxiety. But when I look back now, actually it's made us a lot stronger as a business. It's made me a lot
Yep.
stronger as a leader. And it's helped to facilitate, put stuff in place to stop that happening again,
Yep.
or actually knowing how to deal with it. Because
Yep.
sometimes there is certain things that we're never going to be able to eradicate that
Yes.
happen within a business. We just have to deal with it.
Absolutely. I our founder Brad Sugars, one thing he told me many years ago, and he said he believed he was as successful as he was, and he's a very successful guy, but he believed he was successful as was because he'd made more mistakes than anybody else he knew. Not despite, but because of it. And it was, I think part of it is accepting mistakes are part of success. And the more if many people are held back by a fear of failure, therefore they don't do anything rather than do stuff. Some of it will work, some of it won't. Accept that and move on. Learn from the challenges and the successes, and that is a recipe for rapid and successful growth rather than do nothing and get nowhere.
I think that's the thing. And if things don't happen, how do you improve things internally? How do you
Yeah.
improve, like, say, if you're not aware of things within the business and going, actually, what do we need to do to improve this? Or is there something we can do to improve like the client, experience
Yes.
services? Because there's always going to be something that is going to go wrong, but it's how you manage it that is
Yeah.
the main thing.
Hang
And
on.
for me, certainly that's one of my bugbears, that if something happens from my experience with, like, from being a customer, and if someone doesn't deal with that in a certain manner, that frustrates me. So communication is key,
Yeah.
I think, and dealing with it head on and taking responsibility as well.
Bang on. Well, that makes lots of sense. And I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm
Mhm.
keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest influence on you?
It's a difficult one because I think there's so many people
Yes.
throughout my life that probably have different influences on
Yep.
me at different times. And I think without different areas of support in different parts of my life, it wouldn't help me do what I do. So when we think first most would be my better half. You call
Yep.
it better half. Because without her, I wouldn't have the support for the kids being looked after, because I can manage doing what I do on a day-to-day basis to really drive the business forward, where she's
Yes.
taking a seat back in what she does to facilitate that, because it's difficult, even as a two-parent family, to kind of, both be able to focus on
Yeah.
on careers and be able to really drive things forward. It's not saying that I do, work silly hours because it's something that I don't believe in. But it's still, if it wasn't for her being there, the school runs and things like that. So the kids kind of get that home life as well,
Yeah.
without having to go and go to childcare providers and things like that. So I think feel very lucky from that perspective that we can do that
Brilliant.
with the children.
Yeah.
Um, but I think also there's others, and I feel like I'm doing a bit of an award ceremony of thanking
That's
people for
okay.
their time. But a big shout out as well for me to my actual business coach, Bill Squires, part of the
Brilliant.
actual coach.
Love Bill.
I've worked with him for over 3 years now, to think. It was just like a random kind of like introduction from somebody else that worked with Bill. And it's great because sometimes it's even just like, Bill, how do I handle this? And how do I do that? And it's helped really help us kind of like scale with business.
Brilliant.
Uh, but also as well, like the wider team, being able to tap into him and talk to him about stuff, because there's things that he might see from outside the box that we wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily think about. So I suppose that's another one. And I think just the team in general of the business. Honestly, that at the minute, I'd like to think the way that our business is, the kind of the whole culture is just amazing. The way that we're driving forward as business, all the buying by the team. For me, they're just fantastic.
Brilliant.
Honestly, each and every one of them.
Brilliant. Love it. Absolutely love it. And whether it's from coaches, the learning that you've had, anything to do with business, are there any favorite quotes or sayings that you catch yourself using a fair bit of in or around business or success, Laura?
I think there's a few that I've kind of learned over the years, and I think it kind of goes back to earlier where we were talking. And for me, it's that whole go where you gut instinct.
Yes.
Because a lot of times I think that's underestimated. And there's been a few occasions where maybe we've gone to make a hire, or, other stuff where I've gone, that's not quite right. Maybe I shouldn't do that. And I've gone against what my gut said. And actually it's been correct. Like, for
Yes.
example, then we've done a hire in terms of that. And, that's not necessarily gone as it should have done, because, sometimes people aren't right fit for businesses, or they don't perform as they should do. And actually, I've gone, and then I've been kind of swayed into it in a sense
Yep.
of going, oh, well, they've got this, and they've got these, this education and all the rest of it, and this, background. And you kind of go, with it, and
Yeah.
then it goes wrong, and you're going, I should have listened to my gut instinct in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting because it's gut. Um, the thing for me is logical thought is what we think in the front of our brain, but our subconscious, the rear part of our brain, is way more powerful than any other thing, including our logical brain, our sort of our conscious brain. And the feelings we get in the stomach are the connection between our subconscious and if you imagine it's the most powerful supercomputer in the world, it's worked out that this thing, this person, whatever, isn't right, and it's trying to tell you, but it doesn't have language in terms of going, Laura, this isn't right. You can't do language in that way. So your gut tells you.
Yeah.
So it is actually a communication between you and the most powerful part of your brain. So I absolutely agree. Go go with your gut, or at least listen to your gut. If your gut's saying something wrong, why is that? What is it that I've processed that may make it? If you want to go into the logical world of why my gut is telling me that's not right, there will be some triggers in there. The only danger to the gut side of things is the subconscious loves to find patterns. And what can happen is we can take, if you've ever taken a dislike to somebody, like within about 3 seconds,
Hmm.
it's not big. We logically can't know enough about them to dislike them, if that makes sense.
Well, is that not then a sign, Chris, that because essentially I like to think that very much, and I'm not saying like 3 seconds you can judge by
No, no,
how
but just
I
so
think
the 3 second bit is different
yeah,
to the longer term, right? The three
yeah.
seconds is because they've done something similar to someone you already dislike.
Okay. It's
Okay.
interesting.
Later, if they've done stuff, when you're having an interview or something, you'll get the gut, and that's correct. But the first bit, when you say, I don't like them, and it's because they did that, or they found, I know someone I really don't like that does used to do that
Yeah.
when he was trying to do power crap on me. And so if somebody does that, I won't like them. But it's not logical.
Is it like a trigger for you then that if someone does like something particular, like you were just saying
Yeah.
about that power trip thing and,
That,
and triggering, and maybe that is a factor of it. But for me,
yes.
I think very much, it's not even just like about people, it's about making decisions within business, I think. And a lot of times I've made certain decisions and it might be because I think when you first start running a business, it's quite difficult because you're doing everything.
Yes,
So to
absolutely.
do stuff well over everything doesn't necessarily happen and maybe things slip. So when we think about kind of sales trending, forecasting, understanding what's going on in the
Yep.
business, you don't necessarily do that early on because you're like a jack of all trades,
Yep.
do everything. So sometimes it is gut where you're going, actually, I'm going to do this, even though I haven't looked at the figures or I haven't like, calculated the risk necessarily, but my gut's telling me to go and do it.
Yeah.
And even now, sometimes I'll go, yeah, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And maybe I should kind of take that a little bit more of going, what's this, what's that, what's this? But my gut's gone, yeah, let's go with it and we'll push forward.
It, I would suggest, I mean, one of the marks of effective entrepreneurs is their ability to check a bit about their decision. Not a lot. Like if we spend all day trying to find the perfect answer, we'll never get anything done and we'll never get a decision. But it is just that ability just to go, okay, what are the two or three things that would confirm that that decision is probably right? So it is worth it, but it is just understand that differentiation between an immediate reaction is
Yeah.
typically not to do with the
Yeah.
person, it's to do with something else. A long, not a longer term, I don't mean years, I just mean give it a few minutes.
I'd like to think you know somebody like by a few years' time and your gut kind of has made that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. But well, I guess it's like don't make and I don't think you're saying this at all, so I think that's fine. Don't make gut decisions should be like instantaneous. They probably
Yeah.
you will be processing stuff just subconsciously, and that will make go,
Yeah.
yeah, this is right. This feels right. Let's bang on.
I think it's not that gut instinct like, oh, I'm going to go and spend 10,000 and do this straight away. It is still that kind of process making.
Yes.
Actually, sometimes having that discussion and speaking with your team, but also as well, you know, maybe having a look at other aspects before you make that decision. But I think if you sit and, dwell on it too long, then maybe that,
That's the
aspect
point.
is left. So
Yeah.
you've got to really go, okay, give me, because I'm very much direct. Give me the facts. I'm going to make a decision. I don't want everything in between. I just need the facts,
Yep.
bang, 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 and then go with it.
Brilliant. Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And so I completely agree. And it is just, yeah, our guts are very, given it's connected to our subconscious, a very, very powerful indicator. And certainly at least to go, you might want to double check this. You might want to think a bit more
I think
because
that's why we bring like experts into the team though, as well as we grow, isn't it? Because sometimes if you're going, no, I'm going to do this, and I go, well, actually, just a minute.
yes,
Think of this and you go, so I think that's why we have to bring in people that are
brilliant.
experts in what they do, because then we can leverage that
Yep.
knowledge because I don't know everything.
No,
So yeah, so that's why it's great to build that, team around you that you need to help you succeed.
brilliant, brilliant. And again, again, whether it's from people that you know or business in general, what do you have any favorite books or podcasts potentially that you read or watch or look at that you follow a lot for your own personal development or business success?
I'm gonna admit I don't really listen to podcasts, Chris. I should get into it a little bit more considering I'm now on this one. But yeah, I don't generally listen to podcasts because a lot of times by the time I finish, I don't tend to do that. And I am going to start saying that I'm going to listen to podcasts going forward, maybe, and so certainly for the long journeys when I get bored of the music or
Brilliant,
speak to family members or friends on the phone. But I think for me, one of the ones that kind of stuck out and certainly pushing forward as a business is around Marcus Sheridan, and they ask you answer, and very
yep,
much that's like and also like the visual sale, and a lot of it is marketing because we are like a service-based business. It's about how we are perceived, like
yes,
so things like in our branding on our website, and certainly the information that we put out. And thinking actually, how can I get to the top of Google organically instead of
yep,
having to pay for sponsored ads? So we like to understand what people are asking within the industry, what they want to understand, what detail do we go into, and trying to
brilliant,
get out onto social media, onto our website, onto Google. So we are ranking high up on the Google pages.
brilliant. Yeah, fabulous. And interestingly enough, and we you were aware we had our BizX conference last week. One thing that I think Gary Vaynerchuk said, which is interesting, but it still absolutely applies to what you've just said, is that ultimately it's how people. So Google, um, Google ranking will start over time, not right now, to become secondary to Chat GPT.
Hmm.
Because instead of asking Google and just getting a search, we can ask Chat GPT. So his view is ultimately Chat GPT is already and will become a search engine, and it's about understanding how we get. So when people ask Chat GPT who's the best regulatory consultant, we need to come to the top of that list as well. Whether was, and I found that interesting. And it's a bit not mind blowing because I get it a bit, but it's like, oh my God, it's been Google ranking for
But
so
then
long.
it's like, it's a weird one because how do you actually become top of Chat
I don't know.
GPT?
I don't.
Like Google, what you put into Google, it then feeds through. And
There
again, it's
were
something.
100%. There weren't any answers. I'm not going to give you that. I'm just, but I
No, no,
found
it's just interesting to me because, like, obviously, we're always
100%.
on the forefront of what we're doing, keeping
And,
in front of what we're doing.
and I
But
don't, sorry,
sorry, with regards to like AI and things like that, that eventually it will take over some consultancy-based roles,
yes,
not everything. And it's about how we stay on the forefront of what we do as a consultancy and remain in business to make sure the things that are then superseded by AI that we can kind of bring in a revenue
yes.
stream into the business, and there are things we can do outside the box.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I only throw it in because it was something that came in last week, but it is. I
Yeah.
would imagine for now, ChatGPT is primarily looking at Google, so it is going to
Yeah.
follow through. I don't think it's suddenly going to go like that, but it is just okay. How do we become attractive to ChatGPT? No idea is the answer, but it's something worth it. But interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think I what did I do? I messed with one of the heads of one of my coaches recently because I said, look, eventually, and I don't know how long it is, and because it's AI, it probably won't take very long. I said, you know, coaching, you know, an AI bot will probably be able to coach somebody better than a human being at some point in the future. It may be 20 years, it may be 2 minutes or whatever. But I believe, and I mean, I'm guessing that there is some commonality here. I said, but ultimately, for quite a long time, if not forever, the market might reduce in terms of some people go, great, I'll just get the bot or to do that. But there's a reasonable chunk of the population for a reasonable period of time will still want to know they're dealing with a human being.
But it's that personal interaction as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Because we are human beings, and I think it's that. So I think even though there might be certain aspects again that can be taken away, actually that personal interaction still needs to remain.
Yeah, yes. My only honestly belief, in fact, I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk said his prediction is he said 25% of anyone he said 25% of our children will eventually grow up to marry a bot.
That's quite a bold statement, though, isn't it?
Yep. But what was it? His backup was because AI will help people learn those sorts of elements of empathy. It's already happening in Japan. That doesn't mean it's definitely going to
Mm.
happen, but it's already happening where people are getting married to bots. I think it's just, I think one of the things to look at, and I'm not saying I totally believe it, but it is, I'm open to the idea that artificial intelligence will allow bots to be able to be empathetic over time. So that interaction, but so what I believe to be true is not necessarily that they can't do it, but ultimately there's enough of the population to keep our business going forever and
Mhm.
ever of people that go, I know it's a bot, and I even know it can probably do as good a job as a human, but I absolutely want to deal with a human. So it's not that they can't do it. It's just
But do you not think that might kind of fizzle out over time? You know, when you think about the generations and kind of like you
it
think
might
that
do.
like, generations have still like to use maybe passbooks to go into the bank, don't want to use online banking, things like that. And I think
I
it is a
do.
generational thing because I used to like think with my mum, oh, how does she not know that? And then now I'm going, what's the difference with
Absolutely.
that? And I feel like I'm turning to my mum now. It's bizarre.
Yes,
So,
that's the challenge, isn't it? But yeah, no, I do believe actually in the future that ultimately someone will go, well, for stuff, and the point being is if something can deliver factual stuff really well, that's sort of where we are at the moment. It can analyze things and give us a great answer. We already sort of know that, and therefore we use it to deliver things to our clients. The point that the belief is, and I do believe that bots or whatever it would be will be able to create pretty much the same, if not the same, interaction as we would. So that there is no difference. It's just that I do believe for a reasonable period of time, which is probably good enough for my
yeah.
business, your business, moving forward, people will just say, I don't care, I want a human being, if that makes sense. And but the market will drop because, as you say, the younger generations will go, well, I don't really care. It's like I don't need to interact with a human being for lots of stuff now. I don't need to interact with a human being to buy stuff. I do it most online. That's the last 15 years. You used to have to go into a shop, and speak to
But
somebody.
you just think about the advances, even just like getting car insurance. Like
Yes,
you used to have to
absolutely.
yellow pages, you'd have to ring round and then you'd have to,
Ab-
repeat yourself about 50 times to try and get the best quote. And
Absolutely.
if you were lucky, you might be able to go through one provider that could then ring round others and then come back with a quote of you. But now it's just like you put your details, like you've got money supermarket, things like that, where they just literally come back with a load of quotes. You can see which is the best and say, actually, I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to check the excess,
Absolutely.
etc.
Absolutely. And things like services like that will be replaced by AI because you don't need
Yeah.
anybody to do that collation anymore. It can be done immediately just by a bot going out there for you right now. Yeah, so I think it's fascinating. I think it's just I see in myself and I've seen other people that sort of resistance that yeah, but it'll never replace a human being. But I think it probably can at some point in the future, and it's just accepting it and saying what
I
that
think it's
doesn't.
scary though because it's about kind of what's put in. So it's only as good as what's put into the system to what comes out. And even though like with things like ChatGPT and stuff, in the early time, like early days when I started looking at it, I just asked it certain questions and it kind of regurgitated a lot of rubbish. But now actually when you do put information in, generally it's quite a good source
Yeah,
of truth. I'm not saying
yeah,
it's accurate or perfect by any means this is just from a regulatory piece of,
totally
from a
get. Yeah.
business. But it's interesting when you actually look at some of the stuff that does come out versus like a good few years ago and how it's advancing so quickly.
100%. And the difference, I would say, the difference between AI and searching or programming is it self learns and
Mhm.
adjusts. So absolutely, the first time you use first few times ChatGPT, going back, only a year or
Yeah, yeah.
less than that, it was a bit crap, wasn't it? It was a bit.
Yeah, some of the stuff that came out really, I just read it and I'm like, that is so far from the truth, it's unreal. But
I,
now
I,
you actually put it in and you go, yeah, when
so,
you
so
test it.
if you imagine that improvement with all that what AI uses is the incredible resources of processing and storage, it will accelerate its learning so fast that it won't be very long before it is,
You say it advances so quickly, like if you think about the technology now, if you look over like history and how long it's taken us to get here, but actually the
absolutely.
advancements now are just they're just rapidly expanding the advancements in technology.
Absolutely. So my belief is, and it doesn't have to be everybody's, is that we just have to accept that that's something we what we do right now is probably replaceable in a number of years' time,
It's
buy
about
something.
accepting and adapting, I think,
Our
within,
job
and
is
that's what
adaptation.
we look at, yeah, as a
100%. Our
business.
job is adaptation. It's just like,
Yeah.
how do we adapt and adopt it? And so it creates a massive opportunity for those that adapt and adopt. A whole bunch of people will probably end up compete doing the same thing, competing with things that are low cost, etc., and ultimately not have things. So I think our job as business owners, entrepreneurs, is to be open and is to plan that adaptation, adoption over time.
It is, it's looking for that next opportunity because I think if you
Yeah,
think about companies like, was it Kodak,
yeah,
Blockbusters, they didn't adapt. They didn't see kind of, they didn't look and go, actually, we need to adapt and we need to
absolutely,
reset what we're doing. And that's why they didn't remain in business.
absolutely.
Because it's about always future-proofing your business and trying to work out what is the next thing I can do to future-proof it. And like I say, for us, we know it's not always going to be providing a consultancy service based with people. So it's looking at different systems we can utilize to still provide a really good service, but also as well be on trend and what people are wanting and the things that are going to be taken away as a
Yeah.
business, just future proof us.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And it is just being open to that and being innovative. And I guess it's that sincerity thing, isn't it? I think certainly people of a number of generations are still going to say, well, it might be a robot, but it can't be sincere because it's a robot or
What
therefore
even blows my mind,
sincerity is
Chris, like,
important.
I'm 40, so I'm not over the hill yet, but like AI blows my mind, kind of the what you could utilize it for.
Absolutely.
So when you think about someone that's maybe older than I, in terms of maybe 60 or whatever, and kind of the changes throughout, because if you think about it, for me, the internet came about, I say came about, I was allowed a computer at this point when I was 15 years of age, and it was a desktop. And you just think about them advancements. So you think someone that's like 10, 20 years older and actually what their childhood looked like and what they
Yep.
kind of grew up with, they wasn't kind of the era of IT, of computers. It was, yeah, so it's very much relatively new when we think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. The challenge is it's just accelerating so fast. So it is almost
Yeah.
like, but you're right. And you look at those, as you say, those generational things of things that we always, joked about parents not quite work out how to run the,
Like I
the
say, I'm
new
turning into
equipment.
one of them. "Ooh,
Yeah,
what's
no,
that?
yeah, I
I
guess
don't know what I'm doing." So
it's what we do, I think, isn't it? We like the stuff that we know. We know the like stuff we
yeah.
like, and it's only if something's right in our crosshairs of interest that we can learn about it because it's what we've got has done us well to get us here. And it's like
Yeah.
without choosing to change, we'll stick with the same stuff, however obsolete it becomes over time, and however easy it might be to do something else. We go, no, I
But
just
look
like
at evolution. Look at evolution when, like, as a species, if you don't adapt and evolve,
absolutely,
they die out because
absolutely.
they need to evolve to the environment that they're actually in.
Absolutely, it's going to be a fascinating time, and as I say, it's evolving so fast that it is. Even though I might actually be happier it was actually after my lifetime, and I know it's right in the crosshairs of soon, so it's just dealing with it and being open to it. I think it's just like it's not a bad thing. None of these, all the things that are going to change, um, can be scary, but they can also be an opportunity, and I guess it's just how
Looking at it
we.
as an opportunity rather than it's about making sure that it's not blocks that put down, that basically we're looking and going, is there an opportunity? What can we do to adapt? And I think that's what you need to do in business.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, yeah. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I am keen to know what you say you've learned about yourself on your journey so far, Laura.
Learn about myself. I think, do you know what, Chris? In the early days of my profession, I used to sit back and I used to listen to people and think, oh, they're so confident. They must know what they're talking about. And then I never challenged it. But actually, over the years, and I am quite a direct person, like I say, but I think I didn't have a confidence in the knowledge that I had as
Yeah.
a person. But as I became, I don't know, kind of further in the industry and knew more and more experience, because you can appreciate it is complex and we don't know
Yes.
everything in regulatory.
Yep.
Um, that I actually started challenging that. And it's funny because then people kind of back down and it's like, but you're incorrect. So I think for me, it's kind of that confidence piece
Yep.
that over the years I have. And actually, it's fine to turn around and say, I'm not sure about that. Let me go away and look at it. That's why the regulation sits there and it facilitates us to go back and reference it and have a look at it. But again, it's interesting because you do see the people. It's generally, I mean, I don't like to stereotype, but a lot of times the people that are overconfident normally are the ones that are trying to cover up maybe for a lack of,
Oh, sure.
knowledge.
Uh,
Um, and that's what I tend to find with that. So for me, I think I've learned a lot about be confident, question, ask things with that, and just that continuous learning. But also as well, it's within the business. I think since starting the business, it's been nearly 6 years since I started the business.
well done.
It's a roller coaster, isn't it? Running a business. And yeah,
Absolutely.
we go back to the jack of all trades and all the rest of it in the early days. And, it's that building that team up around you to make sure that you are going to succeed. Because without them, you're not going to succeed. So,
Yeah.
it's about looking after the team as well and making sure that, they're happy, because if they're happy, then there's going to be a lot, they're going to be productive, there's going to be outputs,
Yeah.
and the business again is going to succeed. So I think there's a lot of things that I could say I've learned over this time. And I think a lot of it is resilience and dealing as well with awkward conversations and points that you don't want to have to deal with, and actually overcoming that, because there's been situations I've gone, I don't want to do this. And I think sometimes people think because you are like, the boss or the business leader, that basically that you don't have emotions either.
Yes.
Uh, it seems that they think you're emotional, like you just don't have these emotions and you go into these meetings, because, sometimes I go into meetings and it's not as much now, but sometimes, you feel a little bit anxious because you have to deliver news that you don't want to have to deliver. You have to
Yep.
discipline maybe someone because they haven't done what they should have done. And it's not something to take lightly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of learning that resilience and dealing with it, but also having confidence in myself to say my ability is up there and my expertise as well is up there. And I think because I've had to maybe adapt with, and we go back to like earlier when I speak around the dyslexic piece, that I've really had to adapt how I approach that. Actually, that has helped me because I'm not, I mean, I talk about being academic. I did do a medical biology degree. But I think that kind of like for me is made me think outside the box
Yeah.
in how I approach things. So actually, from a strategic perspective, very much with our clients, I say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because it's not a one fits all.
Yep.
But anyway, I think I've kind of gone off on a tangent on what you were asking then in terms of the question.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And you're right, going back to something you said, I find, um, when we do behavioral profiling, we talk about, are we outgoing, reserved, are we task or people oriented? And I normally say, look, outgoing is how we behave. It's not necessarily who we, it's
Mhm.
not, it isn't a measure of confidence. Outgoing or reserved behavior is not a measure of confidence, it's a measure of how we choose to behave. And
Yeah.
I do believe that, plenty of people. I tend to believe that there's a lot of reserved people are actually very confident, and actually, therefore, they choose not to need to be
Do
outgoing.
you know what? Sometimes less is more.
Yeah, well, I think confidence
Yeah.
can be, as you
Yeah.
identified already, a mask for a lack of confidence. Outgoing behaviour can be a mask for lack of confidence. It doesn't mean everybody, but it's true. It's true. It was definitely
It's not. I
true
think when you
when I was
pick
younger.
up on things, or when people are saying things, you're actually, that's not correct. That's not correct. I don't want direct to say that's not correct, but I kind of lead them into saying things that
Yes,
might then demonstrate it's incorrect. So
yes.
it's asking them questions and probing questions, because it's about, I think sometimes as well, giving that respect to people and not be,
Yeah.
you're wrong. But let's have
Oh,
a discussion of why, let's have a discussion of why you think that that is the case.
saying to anybody you're wrong just it doesn't help, it doesn't change anything, it doesn't create any learning
And
because
it just crushes confidence even more.
it creates
For
combat.
me, yeah, it's about trying to lift people up and give them confidence. But I think sometimes when people, I think the concerning thing in our industry is, we are a consultants there, so
Yes.
we give them information, and we need to make sure that the information that we're given is correct. We can't just
Yeah.
fluff over it and say to people, "Oh, yeah, it's this, and this," because that can have like a detrimental impact
Yes, of course.
on these people and kind of their route to market and getting their product to market. So we have to make sure everything that we're providing is spot on. And if we are unsure as a business, certainly for me or the team, we discuss it internally. What's your thoughts? Because, in terms of the regulation, it sounds silly because even though it's in black and white, it can be open to interpretation. And
Yeah.
certainly with like, again, the advances in technology.
I mean, I guess law is open to interpretation, isn't it? I mean, so stuff that is very, I mean, and regulations, I guess, are part of that whole legal structure. It's still open to interpretation. So it is your expertise that's so key. to be
But I mean,
able
it
to
demonstrates with the regulation that actually it doesn't cover what's required because then they come out with guidances to help
yeah, got you.
facilitate in areas maybe which is unclear, and that keeps happening.
Absolutely.
Wow. So it just demonstrates that actually there is interpretation within that, even though there's again 365 pages of regulation,
Oh,
there's still
wonderful. One for
interpretation.
every day, isn't that lovely? You can read one every day and then reread it at the start. And, isn't that lovely? Well, look, Laura, it's been fascinating to talk to you. I really could talk to you all day. But I know we both have stuff to do. So, for anyone that's interested in getting in touch with you or your business, what would be the best way to do that?
So we've got like several different methods. We've got LinkedIn, our company page. You can find us on LinkedIn. We've got our website. We've got our info at lfhregulatory.co.uk. You can get in contact or even just give us a call.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And well, look, it'd be great to catch up again in another 6, 12 months to see how things are developing. And we could talk more about AI because we know who knows where that is even in 6 months' time. But
I'll bring our software experts in for that one, Chris.
oh, let's do it. Yeah, that'd be quite interesting. I am fascinated by it. Probably not enough to research as much as other people, but I am interested in where we're going. But look, for now, thank you so much for your time. And as I say, yeah, let's catch up again soon.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.